Hello friends, this will be everything you need to know before the third season of My Brilliant Friend. But before we begin, I'm sorry about my pronunciation throughout the video. Alright, let's go! The story is about Elena Greco and her best friend Rafaela Cerulo, but everybody just calls her Lila. They grew up together in a small town, and in that town was a lot of drama. That drama starts with Don Aquile, who's a loan shark, a piece of garbage, and owns a grocery store in the town. And because he's a piece of garbage, he gets killed, but everybody thinks it's this guy by the name of Alfredo who did it, and he gets thrown into prison. That brings us to piece of garbage number 2, or as he's known, Donato Sarratore, who has one of his many affairs with Melina Capuccio, but he denies ever being with her and she goes crazy. The thing is, Sarratore had a son by the name of Nino who Elena is in love with, but after the whole affair, Nino and his family move away. Years later, Elena is in high school, but her best friend Lila had to drop out. This is because Lila's father, a shoemaker by the name of Fernando, wouldn't let Lila go to school past elementary school, even though she was the smartest person in her class. So Lila instead started to secretly design shoes with her brother Reno, in hopes of someday making it big and getting out of town. And here's where things get really messy. You see, after Don Aquile's death, a new family took over the town, and that family is the Solara family. In this family, you have Michelle and his younger brother Marcello, and Marcello falls in love with Lila, but Lila rejects Marcello, which upsets her father Fernando and her brother Reno, because Marcello's loaded with money and they're poor. And that brings in Stefano Carracci, who is Don Aquile's son. Just like Marcello, he also falls in love with Lila, and surprisingly enough,
he said yes.
He also liked Lila and Reno's shoe idea, which are mainly Lila's ideas, and decides to invest in them. But it turns out that the shoes become too expensive to sell in the neighborhood. So right before Stefano gets married to Lila, he makes a deal with Michelle. And the deal basically gives the rights to the shoes to Michelle, which was an absolute betrayal for Lila, because Stefano had promised them not to deal with the Solaras. But instead the season ends with Lila realizing that she's been used by both her husband and the Solaras, just like her shoes. And that brings us to season 2, where everything gets 10 times worse. You see, by the end of season 1, Elena meets Nino, who she's in love with again, but she comes to the realization that Nino probably likes Lila. Despite that, in season 2, she does everything in her power to get Nino's attention, while Lila, who's in a horrible marriage with her husband Stefano, struggles to make it day by day. But everything changes after she has a miscarriage. After finding out that Lila had a miscarriage, Stefano sends Lila, Elena, and Panuccia to the beach, Panuccia being his sister who is pregnant by Reno, and is also married to him. At that beach, which Elena chose because she would see Nino and Lila fall in love with each other, which Elena was absolutely devastated to find out. And in more bad news for Elena, this guy by the name of Bruno falls in love with her.
We don't talk about Bruno.
That's right, because he's almost completely irrelevant to the story. Anyway, Stefano finds out that Lila and Nino were seeing each other, and of course, like always, he beats on Lila. And after getting back from the beach, several things happen. The first thing is that Lila and Nino run away together for 23 days. After these 23 days, Nino leaves Lila because he doesn't like her anymore. Yeah, Nino isn't really all that. Granted, he was beat up and he was told never to see Lila again, but still, he was basically leaving her before that. Anyways, after those 23 days, Lila comes home after a guy by the name of Enzo comes and speaks to her. Enzo being yet another guy who's in love with Lila. When Lila gets home, she tells Stefano that she's pregnant and that the baby's not his. But Stefano's so delusional that he will swear on his life that the baby is his. After Lila has her baby by the name of Reno, after her brother, we find out that Stefano got this girl by the name of Ada pregnant, and she has a daughter by the name of Maria. Quick side note, Michelle is also in love with Lila. So yeah, that's a thing. Anyways, we then cut to Elena, whose study habits are so meticulous, you think she's using ClickUp, which is a tool that can help you stay organized, set reminders, or even worked on a shared document much like Google Docs. And for just $5, you could get unlimited storage and a whole list of other perks. Link is down below. Anyways, Elena goes to college in Pisa where she meets 2 guys. One is by the name of Franco, who leaves her, and the other is Pietro, who actually gets engaged to her. And he actually seems like a decent guy. Anyways, Elena, after finding out what happened to Lila, writes a book about their stories. That book then gets published by her soon-to-be mother-in-law. Elena then goes to visit Lila and finds out that she moved out, living with Enzo and working at a meat factory. And that meat factory is owned by Bruno. The season then ends at a book signing that Elena's doing where she meets Nino once again. And yeah, I hope I answered all your questions, but if you have any more, leave a comment below. That's it. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you liked that video and want to see more like it, leave a like and subscribe. Adios!